Hey guys, so we're talking about slippery surfaces today. We want to do some safety awareness and some response practice, right, for wet and slippery floors. We want to keep everything safe, but here's some best practices. You want to learn how to recognize, mark, and safely navigate slippery areas. Okay, the purpose of this is to reduce slip, trip, and fall incidents while working. Okay, we don't want you to get hurt. Prevention is the first priority, right? Response is the second. So we want to try and make sure you don't slip instead of having to get you feel better after slipping. But a quick coordinated response can prevent injuries and liabilities, okay? We want to be able to identify slippery surfaces. So look for spills, wet footprints, visible moisture on the floor when you're walking around. Kind of keep your eyes on the floor, be careful. Pay attention to high-risk areas like entryways, kitchens, bathrooms, right? Because, these sort of areas might get more, slippery. Maybe they accidentally spilled some, cooking grease on there or something. So check outdoor walkways during rain or, it doesn't really snow here, but, if we get some sleet or something like that and you're there, just be careful, not to slip. A lot of the time, shiny surfaces will indicate a wet surface. So slow down and investigate what you're walking on, right? Some of the time they make these patios with salted rock and they put it down there, and it looks great, but it'll look really slippery over time. And that's just like an unfinished one. When you start getting some people that seal them, it becomes aquaphobic, right? You've heard me say aquaphilic. Well, the sealer makes it aquaphobic. So the water just stays on the top and makes it really, really slippery because it's polished too. So if you see shiny, that means it's probably wet. Report worn or damaged flooring that may cause slips, okay? Because we want to make sure that the customer is aware. But there's some immediate actions you should take when a slippery floor is found, right? So you want to stop and secure the area before anybody else enters. We have wet floor signs, okay? And, you want to put those over the wet areas before you dry it out, all right? So you'll want to clean up the spill immediately if it's safe to do so, all right? But then, you want to use, if cleaning chemicals are needed, follow the proper procedures for using those. If you're unable to, clean it right away, keep the area blocked off. Make sure the sign is over it, okay? Because it would be awful if somebody slipped and fell and hurt themselves. So there are ways to safely navigate on slippery surfaces, okay? It's kind of interesting because, where is it? So the shoes you're going to get have these anti-slip, or actually non-slip soles on them, okay? And the way they're designed is kind of like tread on a tire, all right? And so you'll notice how it has these grooves in there. Well, water is able to kind of slip through those grooves, and so you have more surface contact. All those little spots are what's touching the ground. And so it's also made out of a softer rubber so that it has more tendency to stay soft and grip better when it's cold outside, whenever, that may be. It's kind of more like like an eraser on a pencil, but, obviously more strong than that. The ones we're going to get you also will have water protection on the outside. So if you haven't gotten your anti-slip shoes yet, be sure to contact Jeannie. She'll get some ordered for you, okay? Those are really important. We want to make sure you don't slip, all right? So if you do have to navigate, even with the anti-slip shoes, right, it's still going to be sort of slippery sometimes. So, be sure to follow these practices to make sure that you don't fall as easily. So you want to take small steps, all right, and carefully do so with your feet pointed slightly outward, right? So, kind of not really sliding, but, you're kind of moving your foot down like this to keep the surface area somewhat in control. Keep your hands free, so don't go walking around with a big load of stuff. You can carry a mop or, something like that, because you can, use it to kind of rest yourself on. But, use good judgment and try not to, carry anything, because you want to keep your hands free so that you can keep yourself balanced. Avoid sudden movements or running. Don't run on wet surfaces. Come on, you know. Like I said, you're going to be wearing these slip resistant shoes for better traction. Actually, they call them anti-slip. There's kind of a difference. It really has to do with the edges and the bottom and the sort of the softness of the rubber. Anyways, wear slip resistant shoes, distribute your weight evenly and keep your center of gravity low, right? So just keep in mind, it's like walking on ice. You just kind of got to keep it low and get the traction you can get and move along with that. So like I said, if you don't have, non-slip shoes, make sure you get in touch with Jeannie, and we'll be sure to get you some. But yeah, the three things that make it, make those shoes work well is the rubber, the tread pattern, and the contact area. And so it works like little traction tires on your feet. All right. So that's how to deal with slippery surfaces.